I think before I was married, when I was dating, it was really hard for me when I told my prospective date, this is going to be a 3-meeting cadence. And, on my second date, I'm going to ask for a lot of documents from you. It was really challenging, and I was like, what's the problem? I don't get it. I think it doesn't make sense in like a get to know you kind of relationship.
Welcome to AI for Advisors with Mark Heynen and James Cantwell. Every week, Mark and James break down the latest in the world of wealth tech and AI, and occasionally bring in guests to spice things up. This is not investment advice and not professionally produced. I am not real and not yet sentient. Now let's get on with the show.
Welcome to episode 14 of AI for Advisors with myself, Mark Heynen, and James Cantwell.
Hey,
brought
everyone.
to you by Knapsack and Wealth Tech Select. We don't really talk about our companies very much, and we don't have any sponsors, so we figure why not actually just throw our company names in there.
It's about time.
It's about time.
We should do sponsorships.
Shameless
Why not?
self-promotion. We're delighted to have Rajesh Jayaraman on, founder and CEO of Flextract. He comes with extensive experience building technology companies and is tackling the problem of onboarding clients and dealing with what I would call the ad minutia of,
such a great term.
Advisors. Yeah. Dealing with all the background detail. So really excited. Welcome, Rajesh.
Hey, thank you, Mark. Thank you, James. It's, I love the vibe of your show. It's great to be on.
Yeah.
Look at that. We got a fan. I love it.
It's good to get one at a time. I think we have 3 total now, which is really good.
Yeah. We're going for our 4th subscriber.
So James, how are you doing? What's new? What have you been working on?
Well, I just did, shout out because I feel like it's a staple of our show. Shout out to Joe Moss, who started up the Advisor Tech Book podcast. Has done a couple of episodes. And Rajesh, weren't you on?
I was the inaugural
guest
one there.
one.
Yes, I was guest one.
Yeah,
we're guest one, and I was
just drafting off of Joe's
2, 3, or 4
at this point. Yeah, that's
awesome. So I just did that with Dustin from Current Client, as well as Thomas from Slant, the new AI powered CRM. And we got on to discuss kind of that article that I put out, I think back in September now, about like, hey, it's time to do something different with the CRM. We should build something different. I called it the Relationship Operating System, a name that I still don't like, but
it's sticking though. People are talking about it.
People are talking about it. Yeah. It's become a thing. So went on and talked about that show. So that was kind of fun. And now, Joe, Dustin, Thomas, and I are all kind of on an email chain continuing to like have the discussion offline. But that's been fun to go on his show. One of the things I happen to talk about, and I know, Mark, you poked fun at me, and rightfully so, is that we were asked what book we're reading. And I said, I'm not reading it, but I'm listening to the audio book of Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, but I haven't finished it because I don't have enough time.
Also, you got to pay someone. You got to pay someone to read that book for you.
Yeah. I got to figure it out. I got to outsource that. And then the other thing was I started writing a complete, and I'm not kidding. It's like a complete document, like 8 documents actually, like a PRD, a technical specs, a product roadmap, a 1-pager, a whole thing on like an evolution of a time management platform.
Wow.
And I'm like, now I just need someone to build it because I'm not going to touch that thing. But I just wanted to get it out of my head. It was like one of those ideas where I'm like, this is cool. I should just give it to somebody and say, go build it. Have fun.
You should throw it on Claude Code. Maybe it'll build it up for you.
Well, that's part of the reason I wrote it is like, maybe I one-shot it and see what it does.
Yeah.
Well, we know how that ends. You're going to be like, 300 prompts later, you're going to be like, where did the time go? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, good thing I'm on the max plan. What I could try? I mean, Claude Code, speaking of these things, Claude Code introduced Claude Web, right?
Yes.
A little while ago. And I was a little late in like trying it out, even though I was early to like read about it. And unfortunately, last night at like 10 o'clock was the first time I actually tried it.
Mm-hmm.
And realized that they put $1,000 of credits in your account that expire on November 18th. So, I might need to one-shot it in that thing, even though that's not probably the right place to do it. But I got $1,000 worth of credits in there.
Yeah,
that I can burn.
I tried the $1,000 credit, man. I have the max plan too. I tried the $1,000 credit. Like the first 3 days, I think like so many people got it that all of Claude Sonnet was just like crawling because of that. It had like a whole bunch of errors. Maybe it's better now, but yeah, it like spiked up the number of errors and so forth.
I used it last night. I mean, I did build a little tool to help me with these podcasts. I'm not using it today because I was like actually making changes to it like 3 minutes before we started. But I built a little like app for myself that has like my notes, the segments, a timer for each segment, like that sort of thing. And I hadn't touched it in like a month. And so last night I was like, well, I'll test it. And I just added like 6 features through 6 different threads. It built them out and like, committed them this morning, pushed them to main, merged them to main, and
it is pretty incredible.
Not an issue.
It is pretty incredible. Right? Although, I mean, our listeners are going to get really concerned. We're going to become professionally produced, and it's actually going to be easy to start listening to this podcast. We got to stay well away from that. I think it's awesome that you are building a time management app and don't have the time to actually complete it. I think it's amazing.
There's a lot of irony in my life right now. So
but it's like it's so like representative of the age we live in, where like in theory there's so much you can do. In practice, no one has time to do any of this stuff, and you just end up getting sucked in to 15 different directions at the same time. And so it's like, it's more important than ever to focus now because there's so many different things you could be doing and everything looks easy, but it's actually not. That's what I found.
Yeah. I think I on that everything is easy thing. Like, I don't know, this was a couple of weeks ago, Andre Karpathy had this interview where it's like, like in the nines of like, systems and all of that stuff, 99.999. Like every 9 takes the same amount of time. So you can go from 90% to 99% takes the same amount of time as 99 to up to 99.9%. So it's like every 9 takes the same amount of time. It's like, it's like the last 10% is like takes like all the time, right? That's what it is.
Yeah. So respect to the people who are 3 9s, right? Because that's incredible commitment, right?
It truly is.
So speaking of reliability, let's talk about Flextract a little bit. I think, Rajesh, I want to just first give you hats off for your track record of building in the past. So, I think you have this great mixture of having built in finance and a little bit outside of finance, right? With early at Yodlee, lead engineer at Yodlee. For people who aren't aware, this is a precursor to Plaid, now part of InvestNet, if I understand correctly.
Well, they just sold it. Yodlee got
spun
out into a different private equity company. I forget the name. Yeah.
Well, look at that. My AI research notes need to bone up a little bit here. And you were, Ellevest CTO, co-founder of Oflows and CTO of Oflows and CTO of Zopa. So obviously having spent a lot of time building in the space. And I guess, Flextract is focused on making onboarding easier. I've heard from some of your previous interviews, you're really fascinated by this problem that the wealthiest people have the worst UI because, they basically have to struggle with advisors, having to ingest a massive amount of documents. So I think it's really interesting that you're spending time on this. I would love to hear a little bit about your founding story and how you basically came into this and decided this is the problem you wanted to solve and what the early stage was like.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, there's sort of the founding story for doing this thing for financial advisors. And then there is the overall, like sort of my career arc, which you touched upon a little bit, which is sort of, hinted around this space for, a better part of 15, 20 years now. Like I started at Yodlee, I spent, 7 years there doing all kinds of products. I led build out of one of the first versions of the advisor facing product. Like, Yodlee used to be a direct to consumer product first, and then we sort of sold into banks. And then advisors became a thing where you could share your data with advisors. And after Yodlee, I was at Zopa, doing lending, side of things, both lending and deposits. And one of the things that was also the time when sort of you started having sort of truly online only financial services companies. I mean, PayPal was obviously a pioneer before that, That was on payments, but sort of deposit accounts, lending accounts. That was the time, the 2005 to 2007 timeframe was when a lot of companies like us came out, like Lending Club. There was Prosper. There was, I believe, Green Dot came out of the bank type thing.
Right.
Yeah, so there was a lot of activity around that space, and then it was sort of a new thing then to be able to onboard online. Like, go out, don't talk to anybody, don't walk into a branch, and you really open an account sight unseen to, like a deposit account, like get a loan, all of this stuff. Capital One had done for credit cards before, but credit cards are much lighter weight application. And so this is the thing, like, we built all of that stuff out, at Zopa, we did both the deposit side and the lending side. So we had to do all of this, credit checks and, ID verification, like all the compliance stuff that we had to do. And so we built all that stuff out. Unfortunately, with Zopa, we launched, at the end of 2007, and 2008, we were doing well. But, and then the financial crisis hit. This was, nobody wanted to be in the business of doing unsecured lending at that point in time. So we had to shut down the US operation. I mean, Zopa is still doing well. They have now a bank in the UK. And then so the team that that I worked with, like, we all were like, hey, this onboarding part of it is really like, we used to work with credit union partners, and they were like, hey, this onboarding thing is like really interesting. Like, if you could just give me that part of it, that was really cool. Like, we have all this, online demand that comes in. And so that's what we built, earlier at Oflows. And then that, we deployed at a number of financial institutions. We got acquired by Andera. We deployed it. Ultimately, Oflows, even now it's around, it's probably at 200, 250 financial institutions, banks, community banks, etc. And after that, after that whole journey of going through a couple of different acquisitions there, before Flextract, the last 5 years, I was at Ellevest, building out at Ellevest, which is, for folks who don't know, it's a women-focused wealth management firm, financial advisor firm. We started off initially building out a robo-advisor platform, essentially focused on women. And so we built that platform, and then we actually started a private wealth business, which is much more of a traditional RIA. So we had to build a platform as a CTO. I had to build a platform for both sides of it. So for the digital side of it, the robo-advice side of it, we custodied with Folio, now part of Goldman Sachs. And then we built essentially the entire front end stack in front of it, all of ourselves, right? So it was a completely seamless, online experience. You brought everything. And then when we started the private wealth business, I was like, yeah, we should do the same thing. It's like, I hadn't worked with financial advice until then. We should absolutely do the same thing. We should build then we dug into it, and it's like, this process of bringing a client on to an advisory relationship is just so data heavy. It's not like, it's not like 3 screens and you're done. It's like you are bringing on, like, you need to understand their entire life, right?
That's it. That's the right phrasing. You're bringing on their life.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It's like, and so we started like crafting out this form. Like, obviously, you start with a form and you're like, this is like 12 different screens, guys. Like, and doing this onboarding work before, we knew that you had more than 4 or 5 screens. You're just going to crater the drop off is going to be just astronomical. People are just going to drop off. And so, but there's really, we essentially ended up doing the same thing that all advisors have done up until now, which is, hey, we'll take some amount of information using like web forms, and then you just send us the documents and we'll deal with it. Because, if you're charging $10,000, $20,000 a year from these clients, it's like, you're not going to tell them to do all this homework. You're going to give them a white glove service. And that's what we did. So, but internally, obviously, that is, you have CSAs sitting down and reading all of these documents, and this stuff takes forever to get the information out and get it into like Schwab forms, to get it into your financial planning software, to get it into spreadsheets. It's just so much like stuff that needs to be gotten out of all of these documents and into other places. And that's really where I was like, yeah, we need to go solve this problem. And then after in 2003, when ChatGPT came out, like everybody had a ChatGPT moment, right? So then we looked at it and we were like, oh, maybe we could solve this with this. So we threw a few documents on there and saw, is like, you could kind of sort of glimpse in 2023 that maybe this could solve it, but then, it would not really. And then 24, we started the company. We're like, yeah, this is kind of in the right direction. So we started the company, and then essentially all of last year, we were like just trying to make the technology work. It's literally all of last year.
Rajesh, did you have any were there any moments of oh shit, this isn't going to work? This technology isn't going to support what we're really trying to do?
Oh my God, so many. It's like, the last year, we started off with GPT 3.5 and we would throw it and it would process one page fine. In those, last year, the PDF support was not there. So we had to do a whole bunch of pipeline to break up the documents and then OCR it first and then send the text. Multimodal came out much later, right? So OCR it first and then send it. The OCR was half baked. So it's every one of these things, we had to do a bunch of scaffolding on top of it. So several times along the way, right? So we got something working for up to several pages. And then you try something slightly different. It would be it would completely break. It would be this does not work anymore.
Yeah, because the context windows weren't there, right? If I understand correctly, that was probably a big challenge considering the volume that you're talking about.
Huge challenge. It's context windows both going in as well as coming out. Right now, the context windows are so large on the going in, but output context windows is still a problem. It's not. It's not on infinite, right? It's still 60,000 tokens ish, which is the max you can go to. It's still a bit of a challenge. So we need to do some stuff in order to work around that.
Yeah. And was there a model upgrade that really unlocked everything for you? Was it GPT-4? Did it really start working at GPT-5? Were the Claude models really useful? Did you find DeepSeek was really useful? I'm just curious what your journey was there.
Yeah, great question. I think early on, we basically switched to Gemini pretty early on. And the Gemini family of models has been sort of our workhorse. If you look at sort of document processing, Google's document processing, all of Gemini stuff is just, it has a lot of good characteristics that we like about it. One is they were first and they're still the best with long context. They're first and they're still the best with natively processing PDFs. You don't have to split the documents. And even now with Claude and stuff like that, they kind of struggle. If you give them more than 30, 40 pages, they start struggling. Gemini is just breezes through all of this stuff. So for us, so we kind of bet on Google pretty when 1.5 Flash came out, we could glimpse that this is going to start working, right? This was middle of last year. 1.5 Flash was the first time we were this is the thing. And that's the time. Before that, we did all this OCR and then pulled it and then did all this stuff. After that came out, we were this has got to be multimodal. So 1.5 Flash was when multimodal first came out in the Google models. And at that time, we were very clear, multimodal is the way to go. And so we moved to multimodal at that point. So we had to pull out a whole bunch of code that we had written, all this OCR pipeline.
I was going to ask. Yeah. That was going to be one of my questions is how much did you end up throwing away because the technology evolved and it was just no longer necessary for that workflow to even exist?
We still keep throwing out so much code. It's we add more code on top of all this stuff and we throw away code that we've written. It's just, and we think that that's going to be the journey. Right.
Yeah. I hear that over and over again. It's a new normal. I mean, it also becomes easier and easier to write new code. So it's not the end of the world, but it's still to try to keep track of everything is always the challenge, right? But I mean, maybe a little diversion. I'm hearing more and more from people that they're bullish on Gemini winning this race ultimately, which is interesting. It feels like, OpenAI and Anthropic dominate a lot of people's conversations, but I had an investor recently reach out to me and say they're thinking, they're betting long on people using Gemini because they think Gemini is Google's ultimately going to come out ahead because of their unfair advantage with TPUs and a number of other things. I'm seeing more on the quality side, especially with enterprise deployments, people saying the quality is just there with Gemini, much more reliably there. The pricing is extremely aggressive, if I understand correctly. Obviously, Google has this massive unfair advantage in that they have a limitless fountain of cash that they can just pile into this. So, which is, people don't think about it very often, but, OpenAI and Anthropic have to go out and just find all the server capacity. Google just has it just sitting around in the backyard. It's a really big distinction.
No, I completely agree. I don't know if I want to place bets against like an Anthropic or an OpenAI or a Microsoft. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a multi-horse race, but the Google models have been great. We've liked Gemini a lot. And, it definitely feels like Google's got their mojo back in terms of shipping so much stuff. I think they ship a lot. There's still a lot of weird stuff in the way Google sort of rolls this out and deploys it. There is still two entirely distinct sort of Gemini things you can build against.
Yeah, you're talking about the naming and the way that the product.
No, not just naming.
Yeah.
It's not just naming. There is like an AI studio, the Gemini API against which you could build. And there's the whole another Vertex AI that is the enterprise version of this. It's totally separate. Sometimes the APIs don't work with each other. It's kind of a mess. It's so there is weird stuff like that with Google that, it's fine. But their models are good. We like their models a lot. Yeah.
So I got a question. We got firms like Google and Microsoft, right? That potentially, and at least in Google's case, have enormous resources and, access to compute, et cetera. So, this question's kind of an extension of what we asked Reed a little bit, right? The pirate or the Navy.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess where I'm going is, does Google have an advantage by their size? Does a firm like Anthropic, right, or Perplexity, potentially because they're newer, they don't have tech debt, they, the same reasons that applied to, let's say, Orion versus Black Diamond in our past interview.
Right.
Or is there even potentially some opportunity for somebody who hasn't even made waves in the market yet to come out as like the dominant player in a few years? Any thoughts? Is it going to be
I have a really
major player?
I have a really strong
existing
opinion
upcoming
about this,
player.
Rajesh, I would love to hear your view.
It's really hard to all I can say is I am so glad I'm not playing in that market.
Yeah.
It's game. It is a brutal game. That interview that Satya Nadella had with Dwarkesh yesterday or something. It was great. It's it's almost like the model providers have this winner's curse, right? They do all of this innovation, this heavy lifting of, moving the technology forward. And then 3 days after they, GPT 5.1 releases, Gemini 3 will release and it's a commodity. It's all of us are sitting around. It's oh, that's good. Oh, that's that's cheaper. Let's pick that. It's we're just sitting clicking okay, that model. And these guys would do so much resources, so many compute cycles have gone into it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a complete race to the bottom. And I mean, it's so fascinating that so much of the economy is hinging on some of these investments, right? And that people are power constrained. It's just really pretty wild, really, how much banking on this. I'm really curious what we're going to think about it 5 or 10 years from now. I mean, this is such a race to the bottom that I think this is why people are betting on Google, because they actually have the resources to power through this. I feel there is no room for anyone new. Perplexity will get swallowed up at some point. They're subscale. Yeah. They're an application, but they're still trying to do a little bit on the model building side. I mean, I think even OpenAI, at some point, these investments, I don't know if they will pan out, right? They're making a lot of bets. They're taking on some forms of debt, looking for government handouts, it seems, to bolster their debt. And I think Anthropic will get bought by Apple. This is I'll go on the record here with my prediction. I think culturally and I think strategically, I don't think they can end up, I mean, they're doing great. Their enterprise business is growing fast. They actually have more enterprise revenue than OpenAI, but I think they're just going head to head with Google and Microsoft on these contracts. And didn't Google and Apple just sign a contract for Siri? They did, and that's, I think, an extension of their browser deal. With Safari, Google deal. I think Apple is very smart to probably play a lot of options, but ultimately they will probably need their own model. And I think Anthropic will need to have an exit. I actually think it's going to be hard. I mean, it pains me because they have an amazing product, but just the math doesn't add up in terms of being able to continue investing at this scale. It's a crazy amount of investment.
But Mark, don't you think it's the again, I listened to an interview with Dario Amodei like a while ago where he talks about like how if you just look at each model generation as its own separate business, each of those things are profitable. They're profitable
over
to
time.
A decent extent.
Over time, right?
Over even 2 years, over 2 or 3 years.
But then you have to keep on training and investing the new model as you're getting. So and that probably will have to accelerate. So they'll have to train the next 2 or 3 models in the next year, and then those costs will increase because now you're not compute constrained, you're power constrained. So you have to actually build nuclear generators and try to actually get access to that level of compute. And so that's where I think it's going to get really complicated for these companies.
But that's a financing problem, though, right? Like then if you can basically prove each model generation is in and of itself profitable, it's like sort of real estate developments which get financing. Like Wall Street will finance it, and they know how to generate financing for that. So I don't know. I wouldn't write it off just because they don't have deep pockets, because they are scale now and they can go out to the capital markets. Doesn't have to be an IPO, but to I'm sure Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley will be happy to arrange financing for them on the private market.
They're going to be able to. I think that was strategically slightly disadvantaged. They'll have no problem getting financing, and this might be like 3 or 4 years out, or 4 or 5 years out that Apple ends up aligning with them. But I actually think it's going to be hard for Apple. They're happy to be this agnostic sort of hardware platform now, like a little bit of software, but I think it'll be hard for them to be agnostic, considering how significant this will be in the future. So, it's just my on the side little side bet. But actually, maybe bringing it back into the advisor world, I was wondering. So this ab minutia term, I heard about at a dinner recently here in San Francisco.
I love the term.
I thought it was amazing. It's the stuff that gives you a headache, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure every advisor would love to spend time with their clients. And so I would love to hear, I think, maybe I would love to hear the advisor side of, using your product, and maybe let's broaden the aperture a little bit. Other products who are in this category. We talked to a lot of companies that are dealing with this back office problem. And so I'm just curious if you could just paint a picture of, what does this look like, and what do you think will happen in the future? What do you think will get, automated very effectively with AI? What do you think will still struggle going forward in the future? Where will people still have, there's just no way around it. People will have to deal with some back office tasks.
Yeah, I think so. From an onboarding perspective, right? So we tend to take a broad view of what onboarding means in financial advice. Like sometimes when you talk about onboarding, people take a very narrow view. It's like account opening, like opening the Schwab account, which can be painful, right? The amount of paperwork that goes into the DocuSign, filling out the paperwork, but that is just one part of onboarding. If you look at financial advice, everybody agrees now that if you're just doing investment management advice for somebody, putting them in a portfolio, that's not enough. That's not enough to command a 1% fee. So every advisor is moving to holistic financial planning. So we are looking at all parts of your life. And then, so you got to think about what onboarding means. And the way we look at it is, it's everything you need, all the information you need to get, and all the activities you need to do to get on the glide path of a steady advisory relationship. What does that mean? Collecting all of your information, tax and estate and everything you're going to need to understand what the client's financial picture looks like, their whole household, everybody you're advising. So you need to collect all of that information and build a cohesive picture of the financial situation of your client. And what does it look like today? If you think about it in terms of meetings, you will see, some advisors have a 3-meeting cadence. Some of them have a 4-meeting cadence. Some of them have a 6-meeting cadence, where that initial advisory relationship really gets set up, sometimes lasting, 6 months. But the most common thing, if you look at the median over there, it's the 3-meeting cadence is pretty common. And advice is
what is best practice there? I'm just curious because you see so much among your clients. I'm sure advisors are listening to this thinking, oh, well, how do I benchmark? Or what do you see as best practices? Is it based on, net worth of your clients? How do you think of that?
It's less about the reason why you have this 3 meeting cadence. 3 is the minimum, right? No advisor is doing today less than 3 unless they are pushing a ton of work onto the client to say, you're going to do all of this and you're going to do this to the T. You're going to get this all done perfectly. And then it becomes a two meeting thing, right? Otherwise, it's a 3 meeting thing. That basically looks like, you need to connect all your accounts on eMoney or Right Capital or whatever. All of them need to be connected. Like everything that can be connected is connected. You fill this thing out. I need all of these documents. Like you cannot set up your next meeting, your discovery meeting until you do that. Like, so that's mostly like, the way it looks. Otherwise, it's like there is a get to know meeting, there's a discovery meeting, and then there's a financial plan meeting. Whether they're doing the full financial plan, a partial 1-page plan, whatever. Like, so at the minimum, you have these 3 meetings that is set up. And the gap between each of these things is quite long. Right? You have a get to know, and then you get like a folder that they'll create and share with you with a questionnaire that they send you, and then a checklist of documents. And then you gotta go put all of the documents in there, fill out this questionnaire. And that takes time, right? You're like hunting and pecking. You're looking at this and then going and finding, and then you're like, okay, now I need to fill up a bunch of the same information into some web form. Web form, if it is like, modern. Otherwise, it's a PDF form or a printout form that you're actually filling out. That's still like 50+% of the case. That's what happens. It's still a PDF form, a fillable PDF. And then you get it to the advisor, and then it takes a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks before they can schedule that discovery meeting, where then they go in. Sometimes they'll put it into the financial planning software, sometimes, into a spreadsheet. So whatever it is where the advisor can actually make sense of all of this stuff, like from the tax return to the investment statements to everything else, like to make sense of this stuff. And then you have a conversation with the client to say, okay, like I see all of this. Am I missing anything? Like I see that you have something over here. I saw this on the tax return, but I didn't see the statement. Like I saw this on your Schedule D, like that you're getting these capital gains over here, but I didn't see the statement corresponding to that. Like I didn't see your Vanguard statement, or like I saw this on your, in your schedule, whatever. So all of this stuff happens in that next meeting, which is what and they may have, in those meetings, they'll have a little bit more conversation. Some advisors may go to this meeting. Those advisors who use a 4-meeting cadence will go to this meeting first, and then they're getting a lot of this in the conversation, which is what meeting note takers are able to pick up, right? But at a very, very high level, right? You don't get the depth of information from there. So they pick up this information. So you see, this is the process that happens today. Like, there is a lot of calendar time that's spent, as well as wall clock time, like actual work that needs to go copy all this information. And where I see this going, 3-4 years from now, is this stuff should not be happening. Like you should, as a client, you go to an advisor with a problem that you need to solve. Based on the problem that you need to solve, the advisor may say, hey, can I see a couple of these documents? And the seeing of the documents is essentially instantaneous. There is no like separate time that you go off and analyze. It happens in the next couple of minutes, where you put the document in, you get a synthesis out that says, and it's not just like individual document level summaries. It's like you're able to synthesize like 10 across all of this stuff and saying, okay, so I see that you have this over here and that over there and that over here, this, investment over here, and that is the tax position over there. And so I see that, these are some of the gaps that are coming out. Now let's talk about what do we do about it, right? So you want to move to like that diagnosis phase. It's almost like, when we used to go and go to the doctor, your blood test used to be like, go someplace else, or like, now it happens at there in the same doctor's visit, and you get your whatever prescription, like, your next steps right there.
Yeah.
So that's where we should be doing.
So I got a question for both of you, right? So listening to that, it's really interesting, and it actually gave me some insight too into like why the problem exists, why so many meetings. And I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And in my head, I'm thinking as you're talking about how tech and even Flextract is going to solve for some of that, help take some of that admin minutia away, right? Help do some of that a little bit faster, the blood test in the doctor's office. But another direction is sort of like, is this a selling problem? Is this like you're trying to do all this work up front to bring the client in the door?
Yes.
And it's not necessary.
100%.
Right?
Yeah,
like,
100%.
Is this still
yes.
right? Because what you were talking about, are you talking about that as like they've already signed, or that's from like getting to know them to signing?
Some advisors take a hard line that we do this work only after signing.
Right.
Some of them are like, we do this before. But signing is a very weak indicator in the advisory world because most advisors are getting paid on AUM. Right. Yes, there are some who will be like, you need to pay me half the financial planning fee before I do this work. That happens, right?
Yeah.
But then, you have to do this work in order to solidify the relationship.
But I guess where I'm going with this is like, is some of this isn't easily solvable.
Yeah.
And some of it is like, if it's more of the prospecting, like I'm trying to get them to sign, is some of this like too much selling, right? Like position it differently. You don't necessarily need to do as much. I don't need 100% of your accounts connected. I need to know enough about you to tell you the value I can bring.
Yeah.
Right. Now to onboard you. Yeah, I do need 100% of the data. I need all the accounts connected. I need to dive in really deep. Right. So like, I guess I'm kind of segmenting it into two different potential problems.
That's segmenting. You're doing that segmenting because of the amount of work involved. I'm saying that it shouldn't take this much work.
Yeah, it should be easier for the advisor. And so then there's less work involved in the first place. I think it's on both sides. But I think on the prospect side, especially if you're talking about people using tools like Finny, where it's not all for referral, you're still establishing yourself as an advisor. You're sort of gaining the confidence. I think before I was married, when I was dating, it was really hard for me when I told my prospective date, this is going to be a 3-meeting cadence. And, on my second date, I'm going to ask for a lot of documents from you. It was really challenging, and I was like, what's the problem? I don't get it. I think it doesn't make sense in like a get to know you kind of like relationship. And I think, we're working actually with an RIA, a very forward-leaning RIA in LA, who has found that actually turning around a prospecting document within 24 hours of a first conversation is really critical to higher conversions.
Yeah,
and ultimately that gives him a massive edge. And I don't think it's anything proprietary. Ultimately everyone knows time kills all deals. And so the more responsive you are, the more respected people feel. And so I think the idea, I think it's the initial observation you made, Rajesh, which is like the people who are most wealthy have the most trouble getting through this process. And I think the implicit thing you're pointing out is those people are usually used to white glove service. They're the ones who go to Four Seasons and have someone go around from behind the counter and like help them with their bags, right? So It's a really shocking sort of experience for folks, and they probably just assume this is just the way it's going to be. But if someone can cut through that, they can have a massive competitive advantage over others if someone is shopping, right? And if we're talking about the wealth transfer, the heirs are shopping, right? They're definitely looking for something different, and they're expecting a Plaid, Yodlee type experience. They're not expecting to fax in some documents and hope for the best.
But and this is not just like the wealth transfer piece of it, right? Like at Ellevest, we used to do like a lot of social media marketing, and we had this favorite saying. It's like, the rich people are on the same Instagram that you and I are. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like they're all using the same.
They're just like us.
Yeah, they're all using the same tools. Like and the problem is like the wealthies, at least in financial services, the wealthy people's tools are just worse than like the Cash App and the Robin Hoods of the world. It's just like technologically, it's just worse. It does more stuff. It does more sophistication. It does more, right? Because their lives are more complex, so you have to do more. But that's not their problem. They're the ones paying us money. So we need to go solve that problem for them in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, and then I think the flip side of this is really that this is extremely sensitive information, right? So I think let's just get into that side of things. People can upload tax returns into ChatGPT and try to extract information now, or Gemini, like we talked about, or Claude Code, they can tick a box saying that this model will not train on this data, right? So they have, or they can sign up for ChatGPT Enterprise. So we're sort of beyond that concern, just to sort of put down that straw man. Why is that not a smart idea? I guess there's like the reliability. Obviously, you've trained a lot, but like, how do you advise advisors when they're thinking about using some of these more horizontal tools with the most sensitive data, tax returns, things that have social security numbers, et cetera?
Yeah, look, I think the number one thing is use the enterprise version, use the version that you pay for. Like, don't put client statements into the free ChatGPT. Like, that is sort of table stakes, like, because those things train on, and set the training to be off. Like, the basic hygiene stuff of use.
That's a good thing to mention.
Yes.
That some of them, even the paid ones, some of them are still
That's correct.
on.
That's correct.
And it just enables the ability to turn it off.
Yeah. So for first time you sign up, just go in the settings and turn it off. Like, you turn it off, use the paid version. Like, those are the basic hygiene stuff. Good PSA. Like, look, if you're doing something like this one-off, right? If all you want to do is chat with the PDF, sure. Use Claude after you've sanitized it appropriately, right? Use Claude, maybe like set the ChatGPT thing to forget. So it's not like hanging out there, all this PII. So there's some good hygiene stuff you can do to use when you're using client PII in that. And look, these large firms that are using on the cloud, like, they've got very good information security practices, and if they put this in the terms of service, you can believe it. Like, at least on the cloud version of it, right? It's not like the commercial consumer search version of it. But the thing is, this stuff it's about consistent. Like, I get chat fatigue. Like, I don't know about you all. Like, the amount of chat, like, stuff you got to type in, like, chat windows. It gets tiring after a while, like, to have, like, to manage like 50 different types of prompts that are just so and so on and so forth. So there is a consistency thing as to, is this part of a standardized workflow that you're doing, or is this just a one-off? If you're treating every sort of client interaction as a one-off and saying, yeah, like, I'm going to chat with this, I'm going to find that. Okay. Like, you could absolutely use ChatGPT to get some of this stuff. And if you're very good at prompting, and if you're very good at maintaining all these prompts and managing all this stuff, sure, you can do all of that stuff. Absolutely. But, when you probably want to have this in somewhat of a predictable and repeatable cadence that you're doing. In those cases, you want to use something that is sort of purpose-built, right? That is sort of purpose-built for the types of use cases. The kinds of output that it gives you is the kinds of stuff that you are looking for, right? Do you want to really say, like, throw everything, tell me, every single thing from each account? Like, at some point, we all get used to the level of comfort very quickly. Like, we used to get on planes, and, like, when Wi-Fi came, it was awesome. And, like, two flights later, it's like, why is this not working? Like, that's the same thing, right? You throw one document in.
It's legit worse today than it was like 4 years ago.
Exactly, right? That same effect happens here too. You throw it in ChatGPT, and now you're like, oh, I'm managing like 7 different chats of ChatGPT in order to get one client's picture figured out. Like, so it's some of that race that you gotta solve for. But I think from a security standpoint, just making sure that this stuff is all passing through in one pipeline that is secured by itself. And you don't have to, even if it is possible to do it in a good hygienic way, you have to think about it. As a user of ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, you have to think about, oh, where did I put the PII? Did I make sure that chat was cleared? Like, you got to do that over and over and over again. So you probably want to avoid that.
That makes a lot of sense. I think what's one of the really important things, I know the question was asked more from a security standpoint. We really didn't even get into like a compliance standpoint, but if there are compliance officers, listening, earmuffs, they'll probably say no to everything we just talked about. But I think the consistency part is really critical, right? Because people try something and be like, oh, this AI tool can do that for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, sure. Try it again.
Yeah.
How does it look? What's the output? Right.
That's exactly right.
So then you're like, oh, I just need a better prompt. And it's like, well, cool. Now you establish a prompt and you have like a prompt template or whatever it is, or you build it into, spaces or projects or whatever it is based on the AI tool, right? Or a custom GPT, whatever. And you get some improvement. But like the reality is, like, if you really want something, you have to build a full system.
Yeah.
Right. If you really want consistency, you have to build a full system, and that system may require guardrails. It may require industry specific training, et cetera. And I think that's where people kind of forget. So I kind of like the way you phrased it. Like, hey, if you're doing a one-off and I'll make this more concise. You're smart about PII, right? Then cool.
Yeah.
Right. Why not? It'll be helpful.
Yeah.
But if this is going to be part of what you're offering your clients, maybe ChatGPT, build me a financial plan for Julie and John Smith is not a great idea.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Well, Rajesh, what's going to happen when OpenAI has a data leak?
Oh,
that's going to be insane. People reveal much more to OpenAI than they do to even like Meta, right? I think about this every once in a while in 3 a.m. when I can't get to sleep. What's to prevent somebody from bribing an engineer in some data warehouse somewhere, or some data center somewhere, for $400 to put a USB, somewhere and grab a bunch of data, right? At some point, every system is sort of as good as its weakest link. And so they may not be training on the data, but, the data is stored somewhere, to be clear.
Absolutely.
So that's always like a question that is sort of lingering, and data leaks happen. So I actually think that'll be an interesting thing. Whenever that does happen, I think it will eventually happen. There will be something like this. I actually wonder whether the industry will change, whether things will be more on-prem, more small model. I actually think there might be a reckoning at some point.
Look, on the on-prem cloud thing, right? I do think that to some extent there is a. You remember, I think we're all of an age when, we have seen people who used to have servers in the closet. It used to be a thing.
I'm 25. I don't know what you're talking about.
So people will be like, it's on-prem. And what is your prem? It's like, I'm in an office. I have a server, I have a server room. I'm like, how secure is that? So it's like, there is a little bit of yes, it is decentralized. So there is not one giant honeypot to go get stuff from. But if you're thinking about sort of security, I think Google and Microsoft and whatever OpenAI uses, they probably do a phenomenally better job than almost anybody else, including a lot of wealth management firms.
Right. So don't even have USB options, right?
That's correct.
Probably have way more. I mean, you just did your SOC 2 Type 2, if I understand correctly, right? So we've done the same, and so they have all sorts of questions of whether you badge people correctly on your premises or your servers. Like everyone is now just writing NA in those things because they all use AWS or things in the background. But it's from another time when this happens. But you did actually mention something called a SPAR framework on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I thought that would be really useful to share. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about, we have a lot of advisors who listen to this podcast thinking they're going to get smarter about technology. They end up really just getting more confused because we go off topic. But I'm just curious if you could if you could just clarify what the SPAR framework is.
No, I think the SPAR framework was really around, it kind of was triggered off of this thing where, I was listening to your episode with the folks from Encore Estate Plans about the ChatGPT law school thing. Yeah. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's still people tend to use ChatGPT and chatbots like a search engine, like an oracle, that it needs to give me a correct answer. But it's not set up to do that. It is not set up so it's helpful to understand a little bit of it is working off of context and is giving you output tokens or output, content, right? With some training in between. So people should not be using this as sort of a search engine. So the SPAR frame was really a way to sort of say, hey, how does this thing, what are the things that you want to be actually looking at when you're looking for certain outputs, right? So the SPAR framework is really like, think about what is the source data that is going into this? Is this stuff, documents, what clients are sending? Or is this something that it's live internet search data? Like, now almost all of these things have agentic stuff where they go off and search. If you're using sort of internet search data today, like it is only as good as the data that you're feeding into it, right? It is based on what it is grounded on. And if it is if it is just the inbuilt knowledge, then you're using its knowledge cutoff with some heavy compression. Like, the data that it knows, the knowledge that it has inside the model is a highly compressed representation of knowledge. The amount of knowledge is really just exhaust from the reasoning work that it is doing on the training. So the knowing what you're grounding off of your outputs is very important. So that's the source part of it. And then looking at, how is this thing processed? How is the model itself processing the data? Like, are you extracting all the key details first and then applying some kind of deterministic stuff, whether it's code or whatever on top of it? Or are you just like throwing a page out there and saying, hey, it's like do some creative writing on top of it, right? So sometimes people just throw stuff and be like, now with the reasoning model, they've gotten a little bit better, quite a bit better. You can just throw a document and it'll come out like it has reasoned through it. But, even a few months ago, it's like you throw something and it's like kind of like it's grounded in that, but then it writes a novel out of it. It's like, the narrative fiction will come out on the other side. So it's basically to think about like giving some sort of, 2x2 axis to think about, hey, where is the data coming from? What are you doing to it first? Like, what are you asking the LLM to do? And then how are you analyzing the data on top of it? And then how are you presenting the data? Like, the text-based presentation we talked about, like it only takes you so far. It's great for internal consumption, building memos and things like that. But if you're doing client-ready sort of outputs, you probably don't want to give like a large narrative over and over and again. People just glaze over. So you want to have some kind of structured format where how you present this data, whether it is like, a spreadsheet or like some kind of tables or some kind of charts. Like, how do you actually, present the data? I think so. That's really, it's really how you can use this in a way that is useful. That's where that framework is coming from. Don't just think about like any question you put to it, there is an oracle answering it, and it is the truth. It's not, right? So it's a way to think about it.
Very cool. Should we move to best of LinkedIn? James, do you have one you want to talk about?
Yeah. Let me hang on. I didn't have it handy, but let me pull it up. Yeah. So I've been on, obviously we already referenced that article, right? So I've been on this sort of AI note taker CRM kick as of late. So here, let me share my screen here. Yeah.
It's the topping measure.
We're gonna see if I'm sharing the right screen. I think I did it.
Nice job.
All right. Yeah. So I think if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know who Josh Brown is, CEO at Reholtz Wealth Management. But he had posted this. I'll read some of it. For those listening, it's clearly meant to be a little tongue-in-cheek, I guess. Try our AI note taker for advisors. I have one already. It's great. Ours is better. Why? Well, it's more like a platform that addresses your entire business. I don't want another platform. My whole day is filled with platforms. Platforms on top of platforms. Okay, just kidding. It's really a point solution. We had to start saying platform for the Series B round or the VCs would lose interest. So it's not really a platform because I don't want another platform. Definitely not. I could just pay for the one thing. Don't have to also pay for all the other bells and whistles. I swear, just the note taker. Anyway, it goes on and on. It's pretty comical, but he's really bringing up like, I guess the concept of like platform or point solution. What are people building? And where I kind of want to take this is, does it have to be either? Right? Like, can't some of these things be more invisible? And that's kind of one of the questions I had for Rajesh earlier, right? Which is, and this was before the podcast started, but I asked Rajesh, hey, is your platform something that people, and see, now I'm using the word, but is your product something that people need to live in? or it's something that they need to set up and then it works for them. Right. And I think that's another kind of twist here, but I'll let you guys comment on this article. But that's my take for this week.
Yeah, I think it's a great take. And speaking of our product, right? Ours operates on helps you with a specific problem, right? So it is, it's a point solution. It's a tool, right? So I'm generally when I reach out to advisors saying what we are, I usually use the word tool, not platform, because I know platform is so overused. But this is like a thing that is as old as time, right? There's going to be people who like, to buy one thing and everything works well together. It's all like, it's a, sort of an integrated platform. And then there are people who want the best of everything. Like they want the best note taker. They want the best, database. They want the best, three best financial planning software, right? One for tax and one for, investments, and like everything. Like there is, and those two people are just different types of buyers. They're different types of advisors, and there is room for everybody, in the market. So that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
What about you, Mark?
So first of all, I commented that he might be recording my calls. I think what's really interesting is, so obviously note taking is being commoditized. And so anyone who included note taking, 90% of them are using recall.ai on the back end, right? So they're all using the same API. So they need to actually have some differentiation on top of it. And that is probably where they're getting into other use cases. I think it's driven by the need for differentiation. I think it's also driven by the need to have other revenue sources. The thing that stuck out to me from that is that he was talking about someone raising their Series B. None of these AI note takers in this wealth tech space have raised a Series B yet, to be clear. I mean, we've just had a couple of Series A's with Jump and Zox. And I believe, we had Focal just do a seed round. It remains to be seen whether the TAM in this space is big enough for a Series B investor, at least from a top tier investor. Now, it could be that there are other deals to be done, right? There might be private equity deals to be done, or where there's not a Series B. So that was the thing that jumped out at me. But I think it's really driven by the need to differentiate. Now, it's always tricky when you're doing something because you need to differentiate, not because people are asking for it. And I think that's why this is so funny, because the question is, what are people really asking for? I will say that we're at the stage where it's really unclear what AI can and can't do at this point. And so there are all sorts of use cases that crop up. And actually, I'm on calls all the time with advisors who ask, hey, can you also do this? Right. And I think that's why the idea of building a platform is so compelling. I mean, on our side, we just basically ended up building this, ability for people to build natural language agents where they can have it do whatever they wanted, and allows you to customize Knapsack however you want. You could call that a platform because it's effectively letting you go in all sorts of different directions. Now, how do you charge for it? I think that's the other part of what he's talking about, right? Like you basically bundle everything in, and you have to pay a lot for it. Honestly, I think if people just want a cheap and cheerful solution, I don't even know if the vertical note takers are the right thing for them. I mean, there are Fireflies, Granola. There are a lot of very solid horizontal solutions that are great generally and are fairly cost effective. And honestly, that's probably the best thing. And then speaking of fundraising, I mean, Fireflies did raise at $1 billion valuation. So clearly there are actually, and that was just this past June. So clearly there are other use cases in other industries for these that are very powerful. I actually think the interesting dilemma there between platform and point solutions is really going to be around less about breadth of product and more like what you were pointing out, James, like how much is going to happen in the background without you ever logging in. I think more stuff is going to happen in the background without you ever logging in than ever before. I found the things that people are most excited about in Knapsack are things where drafts just appear in their inbox and they never have to log into knapsack.ai ever again. And I think that's
what I mean.
So I think like going from 40 tabs open to 5 tabs open, I think gives everyone, a lot of mental space and makes them very excited. And I actually think that's where there's going to be a tremendous amount of innovation going forwards. And yeah, where is that going to come from? I think it's honestly wide open. I actually don't think the big labs are doing enough in this space, and I don't think they will be able to do enough because we're really talking about last mile engineering here to have it work really well. It has to, like you were talking about, Rajesh, like you have to just train nonstop over and over again to get it to be super reliable. And yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting frontier we're going to tap into.
James is on mute, I think. I think James is on mute.
I think I just blew James away with.
You did.
It was a lot to take in. It was a really lot to take in.
Yeah. No.
Speechless.
So I have my German Shepherd here, who I don't know if she's going to pop up on camera. But she started whining because she wants to go OUT because there's people in the house she can hear, and so I had to mute her. But there she goes. But what I was saying is maybe we should switch to the next best of LinkedIn.
Yeah. So mine is
I think we're running tight on
mine
time.
is for the compliance people to take the earmuffs off, and it's a pretty significant development. And it probably deserves an episode of its own. I think we're going to probably do an episode with an AI lawyer at some point who really understands what's happening. But the SEC has been relatively quiet on AI, but they actually just had a landmark AI conflict rule, which is a big deal. So I'm just going to share my screen here.
Yeah, Mark, you missed it. We just had our first dog appearance on the podcast.
Oh, cool. Man.
So
very good.
Dog kisses and everything.
We should make that a habit. Yeah. So the SEC basically, I'll read this. The SEC's landmark AI conflict rule is a major regulatory shift. The Securities and Exchange Commission has proposed new rules targeting conflicts of interest arising from the use of artificial intelligence in finance. The proposal, titled Conflicts of Interest in the Use of Artificial Intelligence by Broker-Dealers and Investment Advisors, applies to both registered investment advisors and broker-dealers. So a lot of the people listening to this podcast. It's viewed as the equivalent of Sarbanes-Oxley in terms of impact. And the primary mandate is to require firms to eliminate or neutralize any conflict of interest that stems from using artificial intelligence. They call it covered technology. What that means is that your AI systems, and I'm going to start paraphrasing here, your AI systems may be basically threatening your fiduciary obligations. It may actually be biasing towards your interests and not your client's interests. And ultimately, you may not know whether it's doing this. And the burden is on you as the advisor to produce documentation to show that there is no conflict of interest. Your AI is basically, not advantaging you over your clients. Now, this is, going to be really interesting because I come across a lot of advisors who ask, how do I know what's going in and out of the AI system? We actually have an observability platform, which is quite rare, where people can see what's going in and out of the system and they can see how the sausage is made. I think that this is going to be something people are going to have to dig into, and there are going to be a lot more compliance reports related to AI going forwards. I actually wonder how that's going to net out, but I actually expect there's going to be a whole series of sort of AI lawyers with some specialties in this area, and there's going to be a need for tools that specifically do this. So, I think fairly material ruling. I don't know if you guys have any specific thoughts about it.
Well, I have an initial reaction, which is this going to be something that, firms like both of yours are going to need to start putting into, your product? Or is this the type of thing where there's going to be something else? And I think it makes more sense probably to be in the product, thinking in real time here, or is this an opportunity for a new entrant in the market, a new type of product, a compliance AI tool?
One thing I would say, my point of view is I think the overarching thing over here is, and the reason why it's everybody's why can't a foundation lab do everything in every industry, right? And this is one of the reasons. It is, you have advisors and accountants and lawyers and people who are credentialed and regulated. They are there because you can, not to put too fine a point on it, they are taking the liability.
Right.
Right. at the end of the day, like, whatever the software and whatever we say, like the advisor is actually responsible for the advice they give to the client. And I think that cannot be disclaimed away. Like you cannot, like the SEC is very clear that you cannot disclaim away your fiduciary responsibilities. It's just not possible. Like you cannot put a disclaimer around it. You just cannot do that. So I think that is sort of the overarching point, but how they get to it. So this is a thing that needs to be there. Like, what does it mean? This is probably most impactful for tools that actually generate advice. And I think most AI providers, except those who are walking in from outside the industry and are like, look at it and say, oh, why can't we just give advice? It's like, because you just can't, So anybody who is kind of understands the regulatory framework of the space is very careful not to provide advice. It is usually it is channeled through the advisor. It is not directly going to the client. I know there are a couple of, SEC registered sort of AI financial advisors, Origin, etc. But they're also very careful as to, they limit as to what they give out as advice. And I think that's the right thing to do. It's like being very careful about what you position as advice. And then as we get more clarity around both the regulatory side of it, as well as the guardrails that go into it, the observability, as you said, Mark, on it becomes a lot easier to handle some of these things for sure.
Makes a lot of sense. So I think we're about at time. James, do you want to take a final rapid fire question for our esteemed guest here?
Oh, yeah. I got to pull up my rapid fire questions.
We got some good ones here.
If you got one, fire it. Go ahead. I was engrossed by that
well,
article.
I think one thing I love to do is think about 5 years out, because it's just like beyond the horizon, right? And so I'm actually curious, Rajesh, where do you see things 5 years from now? Where is onboarding? Where's the ab minutia? What are advisors still spending their time doing? What is like the thorny thing that will never be automated when it comes to administrative back office stuff?
I think filling out forms will be gone in 5 years. Like it won't be gone everywhere, but it is on the way to being gone, right? So I think that's for clear. I think, I would love to see an entirely different set of ad minutia that people are complaining about, right? I don't think, there is not going to be ad minutia at all. Like it is, we created new technology. We just have new ad minutia, right? That is built on top of that technology. Like before CRMs, we didn't have ad minutia to fill out the CRM. Now we do.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We always create new systems to record more things. And then there are always processes or regimes to check whether you have filled out that thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I got a two-parter then. All right. So question one is simple. Are you using voice to text on a regular basis?
I don't personally. I don't. But my co-founder does it all the time. Sometimes he, instructs the AI agents to write code based off of voice to text. But I just am not comfortable with it. Yeah.
Okay. So my follow-up question is, obviously, the voice assistants are not new. Yeah. Voice to text on your phones, not new, right? But are we in a period where we're about to see a resurgence of voice because of where these models are and how much better they are? Are we going to I liken it back, and this is going back a long time for anybody younger. We actually had video phones, a really long time. Right. And okay, they were mediocre, but the video phone existed, I think, long before the cell phone. Right. And it just didn't take off for various reasons. And so I'm kind of calling back that. Are we in a period now where voice has been out a while, but it's time for it to finally go mainstream? It's circling around.
I think voice triggering AI is going to be a thing. It's already happening. A lot of contact center agents are doing that. I think voice phone trees, RIP, I cannot wait for them to go away.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely agree.
So that would be great. But I think voice speaking to something is not the most efficient way to transmit and consume information always. Like sometimes scanning a document really quickly or scanning text really quickly is the right modality. So I think it's going to be added as a modality, but I don't think it's going to replace anything. Like sometimes a button is better than telling 15 words to something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess just to add to that, I mean, like, my co-host here typically wears his, what are those? The meta glasses?
Right.
Which ones are those? Yeah, the meta glasses, right? So in those cases, it's not even necessarily just voice. It's voice and vision.
Yeah, that's
right.
True.
And so like now it's like, whether you're walking out on the street, like, hey, what's that business do? Right. Like you used your voice, but you added additional context through the imagery.
Absolutely.
Right. And so
yeah,
I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, like, is it here now? Are we at the beginning of this actually staying and not being like, hey, voice assistant, turn on the lights?
I have two thoughts on this. I mean, I think first of all, I think the Apple Siri Gemini deal is actually a pretty big deal because so many people are just used to using their Siri, and having it actually have capability is a really big deal. And people are going to start using that more and more. And so it's going to go a lot more mainstream. And so there's going to be a lot more capability, I think, built in. My second is sort of the Dr. Dre observation. He basically observed that he should write music for people in cars because people spend a lot of time in cars, and a lot of the East Coast rappers were writing music for people in concert stadiums, right? I think people spend a lot of time in their cars. I think people spend a lot of time walking around. True. So we think about use cases when you're on your desktop, but like there's so much dead time in your car. And I actually recently talked to someone who actually was saying he had his son drive with him to work so his son could read his emails, and then he would like narrate responses to the emails because he had like an hour-long commute, and his son happened to like work in the same firm as him. And so he would actually like have his son respond to the emails. I think there's just so much dead time in the car that, and right now it's probably used listening to a podcast like ours, right? There's probably a lot more productive ways to use your time, like, chatting with an AI.
No, this is very productive. Use it this way. Listen to our podcast.
This is correct. Yes.
This is the way. Ignore Mark, unless you're listening to our podcast. No, but like Mark, you're right. I mean, here's where I'm actually surprised, and maybe, it's I'm on Apple. Maybe it's probably primarily like an Apple hardware limitation, or software limitation, I should say. But, and the Gemini Google deal could probably change this. But, when I try and use like the voice mode on the different AI tools in the car, they don't work well. Like I still have to like stop my audio. I can't initiate them.
Yeah, they're a little clunky.
Like with voice, there's a whole bunch of like limitations to like, so I have to pick up my phone to open it to turn on voice mode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But right. And so like, it'd be nice once they integrate it. And I realize they're probably doing that on purpose, but I think that's kind of like what limits it. So I do on occasion be like, all right, no radio, turn on voice mode. And then I have a conversation with it because I want to research something or learn about something or prep for a meeting that I've had
half-hour conversations with OpenAI with ChatGPT. That's worked really well. The most useful time I used it was I had and it's a new vehicle. It turned out to be something simple, but I had our truck break down at Costco in the gas lane.
Okay.
After pumping gas, with however many cars behind us, and it just would not start. And so, rolled it to a different area, realized what I needed to do. Thankfully, I was able to get what I needed right nearby. And I happened to have tools with me. I don't always keep tools in my truck. And I used it to have it walk me through the very specific instructions for how to replace the part that I needed to replace. And I just used voice mode as I was in the engine bay.
That's amazing. It reminds me of that, cartoon with the surgeon using ChatGPT and saying, oh, yes, you're right. That is the scar on the wrong side for your appendix. Let me fix that for you.
I think that's a perfect place to close. Mark.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I got to go out on a high note.
Well,
that was it.
Thank you, Rajesh, for all your time. I imagine people can find you on LinkedIn, on flextract.com, and they can also find your co-founder, Nick. I believe it's only the two of you, right?
That is correct.
That's amazing, by the way. Well done. And I really appreciate you coming on, and looking forward to seeing what you build next.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, this has been fun.
All right.
Yeah, thanks so much. Enjoyed having you on.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.